Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. My name is Tuan and I'm the maker of the Dune Weaver. It has been about 8 months since my last video. We welcome a new additions to the family and life has been busy to say the least, but I'm excited to finally be back. Before we dive in, I want to say a huge thank you to you, the Dune Weaver community. 2025 has been an incredible year. We launched the Dune Weaver Pro, the Mini Pro, and just recently the Dune Weaver Gold. What started as a project in my basement has grown beyond anything I imagined. We now have close to 3,000 makers in our Discord, people all over the world building these tables, sharing their builds, their patterns, troubleshooting together. It's really amazing to watch. And when people ask what makes Dune Weaver different from other kinetics and table out there, it's not just that our is DIY or more affordable, it's the software. So today I'm thrilled to show you version 4 of the Dune Weaver software, a complete rebuild from the ground up. We will have multi-table control, offline support, playlist management, home assistant integrations, and direct G-code terminal access. Now this is going to be a proper deep dive. I want this to be educational because our community is incredibly diverse. Some of you are software developers, but many of you are woodworkers, artists, 3D printing enthusiasts, so maybe hardware makes sense to you, but SSH or Docker or networking feels like a foreign language. That's okay, that's why I'm making this video. My hope is that after you work through the installation, troubleshoot the issues, figuring out how these pieces fit together, you learn something that contributes to your maker journey. There will be timestamps in the descriptions if you need to jump around, but I highly encourage you to watch all the way through, especially if this is new to you. So grab a coffee, get comfortable, and let's learn this thing inside out. Okay, so first up you will need a micro SD card. Plug it into your computer. Then you need to download Raspberry Pi Imager and open up on your computer. The project supports Raspberry Pi 5, 4, 3B, and 02W. The other Pis are not supported, so I don't recommend you go and get them. For now, we're just going to go with Pi 02W. Here we can select an operating system for our Raspberry Pi. There is no need to use a graphical user interface, so we're going to select Other and then Raspberry Pi OS Lite. Make sure that it's a 64-bit. Select Next. Now you select your SD card. Be very careful here not to select any other drive. Want to give it a name? You can do something like Dune Weaver Go, the name of your Dune Weaver, whatever name that you want. You can also do something short like this. I'm just gonna go with Dune Weaver Go for now. Click Next. Here select your capital city, time zone, and keyboard layout. Here you can configure the Wi-Fi network for your Pi to connect to your Wi-Fi. Make sure that Enable SSH is toggle on. You can use password authentications, and then we can use a username password that we set earlier. If you know what you're doing, we can also use public key authentications, but for simplicity, we're just going to go with password authentication. Raspberry Pi Connect is something new that allows you to connect to your Pi if it's also connected to the internet. The difference here is that you can connect to the Pi anywhere in the world, so this is something very useful to have as a backup. Select Next, and we can write the image now onto the SD card. Okay, and now we will wait for this to finish. Now that we've finished flashing the SD card, we can put it into the SD card slot and connect power to the Pi. On the Pi 02W, you will have two micro USB ports. This one here is for power, and this one here is for data. You may have to wait a little bit for the Pi to finish setting up, but after a couple of minutes, you should be able to SSH into the Pi, and we can start deploying the software. All of the comments for these sections will be available on my website, duneweaver.com, under the docs section. So now what we're working with here is deploying the backend code. Here is as an overview of how the Raspberry Pi is connecting and talking with the DLC32 or ESP32. So basically our Pi will host all of the backend and front end of our Dune Weaver applications. It will also store all of the pattern files, handle all of the logic relating to playlists, scheduling, automations, and integrations with other systems. For each of the pattern, when it's being played, the Pi will convert theta row format into G-code commands and then send those commands via USB or UART over pin to the ESP or DLC32 board to be executed. The DLC32 or ESP32 will be running a FluentNC firmware. This is a very popular firmware for ESP32 based microcontroller. What it does is that it allows us to control the timing and the executions of the motors. For deployment options, the recommended way is hosting the backend and front end inside of the Raspberry Pi. We want to use Docker to do this as well. Docker is basically a container like a mini OS versions with stripped down so that you can run application independently and don't have to worry about dependency. In previous versions, we had to go and install Docker and set up the Pi. There's a lot of commands, but I have simplified everything to this one-liner that we need to install and set up the Pi. Now what we need to do next is SSH into the Pi. SSH is a way for us to remote control into the Pi and gain access to it from our computer. So there's this command right here. What you need to do is open up Terminal on your Mac or PowerShell on your PC. Now we can type in SSH and then the host name of our applications, in this case duneweavergo.local, and then enter. Then type in the password. Okay, now that we are into the Pi, let's go back to the documentation and copy this one-liner. Paste it here and run it. This will take a couple of minutes, so sit back and enjoy. When the script finishes, you will see something like this. To log out and log back in, you can press Ctrl D on your keyboard, and then that will log out. And then you can SSH in again. You can also just type up to get the previous command. Type in the password, and then now we are in. We have a couple of comments here that we want to be mindful of. DW update is something that you want to use often. So if you are using the previous versions of the software to update, now you just do DW update and run it. What this will do is it will stop the currently running container, and then it will try and pull all of the images from the registry, update the code, update everything. It will try to also update itself. So a couple more useful things when you are inside of the Pi. You can type ifconfig into here, look for this one, and then in here you will have the IP address of your Pi. This is useful if for some reason you cannot use your host name in your network to access the Pi, and also useful when you want to set a static IP in your router, right? So you can copy this IP and go to your router settings and set this as a fixed IP so that it does not change every time the Pi restart. So now that we have the backend up and running, you can confirm that with DW status, and it will show that we have the front end and the back end running. Okay, so now let's switch to a browser and look at the UI we were able to deploy just very easily. Okay, next up, open up your browser. Can be Chrome, can be Safari, Edge, and type in the host name of your Raspberry Pi that you set up earlier. In my case, it's Dune Weaver Go.local, right? Notice that we don't have to use the port number here anymore. So this is the Dune Weaver Software 4.0. This is a browse page where you can pick and play any pattern that you like. If you have a lot of patterns, I would highly recommend just clicking this catch button. What this does is that it will save the pattern image inside of your browser's cache, so that every time you load the page, the previews are loaded instantly. Here you can search for a pattern. From here you can add a pattern if you want. A pattern needs to be a .thr format, and yet there are different sites on the internet that you can go and find patterns, or you can make your own using tools like Sandify. You can filter the different folders that you have here. These are built-in patterns, meaning that they cannot be deleted. Here we can sort by different criteria, so we can sort by favorite or not. We can favorite a pattern by clicking the heart button here, or we can sort by name, sort by modified date, and size, with the smallest one being the simplest one. You can change sort by ascending or descending. Okay, so in this browse page, you can select a particular pattern. And then here you will have a couple of options to clear the canvas before the actual pattern is started. The first one is adaptive. Depending on where the pattern starts, can either start in the middle or in the perimeter or somewhere in between. Adaptive will look at the positions where this pattern starts and then determine what clear pattern to run so that you don't have a ruined canvas. Clear from center will always clear from center out. Clear from perimeter will always clear from the outer edge. And then clear sideways will do like a zigzag motion here. You can also select none here as well. You can play here and then the pattern will be played. You can click here to preview a pattern playback. Here you can select the speed of the playback and then the progress of the playback. In the new versions, if a pattern has already been played before, the actual time it takes the pattern to play with the current speed will be saved and displayed like this. You can also click in here and see that this pattern takes 60 minutes to play at speed 100. So let's connect our Pi to our table and explore more features. To connect a table, you need to go to the setting page. Here you can select the different serial port that your Pi has connected to. If you're using USB, you want to connect to USB 0 port like this. If you're using UART over pins, then you would need to select something like TTY-AMA0. This is not the right port to connect to. So when I connect the table, if the table is not home, the homing sequence will be run in the background. For auto connect, you will have different options here. You can pick the first available, you can disable it if you don't want auto connect on boot, or you can select your preferred port right here. So I'm just going to do this. Let's go to the setting page while we are at it. We have machine settings. Depending on the step per millimeter for X and Y axis, the Dune Weaver software will detect the type of table here, and this is crucial to getting your table to run the pattern correctly. If you need to override it for whatever reason, you can do that using this drop down right here. For homing configurations, we have two options. We have crash homing, where the radial arm will move more than the length of travel, guaranteeing it to end up in the middle of the table. That's where we know home is. And then we have sensor homing. This is a desert compass add-in that you can configure. You also have sensor offset, meaning that once the table home, you can move the radial arm to any positions that you want, so you can orient the pattern in any way that you want. These are some stability options. I recommend having them off. But if you're having some issue with pattern drift, for example, you can turn this on. What this will do is that it will home after X patterns, so that you can reduce the errors in your patterns. But this is only a temporary measure. You likely want to fix the root cause of your problems. You might have some misstep, or the belt might not be tensioned correctly. So check that first. The other option that we have here is to reset the float NC boards every patterns. On some boards, I do see this come up as a disconnect issue. So if you have that intermittent disconnect, consider turning this on. For application settings, you can set the logo of the applications here. You can change the application name. There are different clearing options here. So you can set a custom speed for clearing. This is particularly helpful when you want to clear at a faster speed, right? So you can do 200 here, but if you just leave it to default, it will use the current speed. You can also customize the clear from in and clear from out pattern as well. For LED controllers, you have different LED provider here. You can have none, you can have WLED. If you're using a separate ESP32 to drive your board, in that case you can input the IP address of WLED here. But the recommended method is to using Dune Weaver LEDs. Depending on your particular LED, you might have different LED number here. So do a little bit of math and counting to figure out the right number for you and input that here. For GPIO pin, we want to use pin 18. After you connect it and test it out, you can check the red, green, blue to make sure that all of the color selections are correct, and then select the right pixel color for your particular LED here. For Home Assistant integrations, we can do that via MQTT, so you can enable that here. You put in the broker address here, you put in your username and your password. For device name, this will be the display name on Home Assistant, so you can put something short, memorable like this. After that, you do test connections, make sure that everything is connected, and then you can save the configurations. There will not be a notification inside of Home Assistant. Instead, you can search for the name that you set here, and the Dune Weaver table should show up. Next up, we have autoplay on boot. This is an option that allows you to play a playlist on table startup. So you can select the playlist here, and then all of these options are the same as the one that we have in the playlist. Still send is a setting that allows you to stop table during quiet hour. So you have the options to let the table finish the current pattern that is running inside of the still send period. You can turn it on or off. You can also control the LED so that when it's enter like a quiet period, it will turn off the LED. And then time zone here by default is system default, but this one is not really accurate. So I recommend you just go and pick your time zone here. For period, you can have multiple periods, but basically you have a start time and end time. You can do daily, you can do weekend, weekdays, or custom. You can pick any of the day that you want here. And then when it's entered into a still send period, the table will be stopped. Software versions, you will have the latest versions here. I have not released this one yet, so it's still showing latest is 3.6. But you also receive notifications in the header bar when it's time to update the software. Okay, let's move to another page. For LED, we can control the LED here, turn it on and off. You can control the brightness. For some of the effects, we will have a primary color. So for example, if we do static, this will show red, right? But some other effect may support secondary and accent colors, so you can set that here. You can select any other effect that you want here. These are the palette that you can also select as well. This is the speed of the effect, and this is the intensity of the effect. Down here we have some effect automation. So assuming that you have an effect up here that you want, you can set current, so all of the settings here will be saved. And when the table is playing, it will run this effect. Same idea here with idle. So whatever we have up here, it will run when the table is in idle. If you have auto turn off on, when the table is idle for 30 minutes, the LED will be turned off. Okay, so let's go to playlist here. Here you can add a playlist. You can put any name that you want. You can add a pattern to a playlist. You can select how many patterns that you want. And these are some of the playlist settings that we have. We have, this one is shuffle. You can shuffle around. This one is repeat. So when 3 patterns finish, it can stop or it can keep going forever. Here we have time pause between patterns. So you can click here to change from second, minute, and hour, and then you can add or reduce it. Here you have clear between pattern settings, so you want something like adaptive here. And you can press play, and then this will play a pattern. Our table is running quite fast, so let's reduce the speed a little bit so it's not too noisy. You can see that this is a now playing drawer that will pop up whenever we play something. If we're playing a playlist, there will be an up next pattern here that we can choose. But if we're playing a single pattern, this will not show up. You can pause a pattern or you can stop a pattern. Notice that when you pause a pattern, there will be a little bit of a delay because of the way that the Pi is sending coordinates over to fluentNC is that Pi is sending 16 coordinates at a time. And whenever we issue a pause or stop command, the fluentNC will finish executing the current 16 coordinates first before it can pause or stop. So you can skip the current pattern and then it will move on to the next one in here. So now we're playing hubcap, and then you can open up the queue. You can order the items here as you want. You can also add an item to the queue as well. So if you go to any pattern that you want here in the browse page, you can add a play next. So it will finish the current one and it won't play this one. Or you can add to queue. This will add it to the bottom of the queue. Next up, let's go to the control page here. So homing here will home the table and run the homing sequence, right? If it's crash homing, you're just gonna crash into the center. If it's sensor homing, then it will home X and then home Y. Stop here, it will stop any current action that is playing. Reset here will stop reset the controller. If the controller is not responding for any reason, you can do this. Remember that you have to home the table. Same speed control that we have here. We have different options here. Center will move the ball position to the center. What's different between homing and center is that homing will find the home positions when it's not known, right? So the ball can be anywhere on the table, and then homing will get it home, right? But center is when the positions of the ball in the table is known. So it will find its way to the center exactly and without any crashing. Perimeter is same, going to the outer edge of the table. And we have align here. So if you're not using sensor homing, this is a way for you to align the different pattern. The way this works is that you want to move to perimeter first, and then you click align here, and then you use these buttons to move the radial arm to the east positions of where you want your pattern to be. And then after that, you home the table again, and then your pattern orientations will be kept. Here are some clear options that we have, very similar to other ones that we have throughout the interface. So this is something new that's very helpful when you want to diagnose what's going on. So it's very similar to the terminal that you use in fluentNC. You can connect here and then send command to the board. So you can do question mark like this to know the current state of the table. Right now it's idle, and then these are the positions of the tables. You can also send G-code command directly into here as well. So if I do something like this, it will move the table physically as well. But just remember that whenever you send any G-code command in here, the positions of the table will be lost. So you will have to rehome afterwards. Okay, and now let's move on to the header bar. So up here we have the options to turn dark mode, and then we can view logs as well. So these are the Docker logs that's very helpful to diagnose what's going on. So if you run into any issues, I would recommend that you check the logs to see what's going on. You can download the log, copy the log, and paste it into Discord if you run into any issue. Next up, we have restart Docker. So if something is sluggish, not working, you can restart the Docker container so that we are starting with a fresh state. and shutdown will turn off the Pi. So it's not recommended that you just yank the power off the Pi. If you do that repeatedly, you will risk corrupt the SD card. So you do this, you wait a couple of minutes for the Pi to shut down, and then you can pull the power off the table. This is something new as well, the ability to control different table. So for example, I can add another table that I have running inside of my network like so. And then I can switch between tables like this. The new UI also works very well on mobile. So you can see that we are on an iPhone 12 Pro, and all of the interface is working really well. You can drag this around as well. When there's a pattern playing, let's start something. You have thought control for this as well. So you can swipe up, swipe down to dismiss like so. And then same with this, you can swipe to dismiss like this. Everything looks good. And it's controllable here, right within your mobile. So with this new versions, you can install this as an app on your phone. What you do is when you go and visit this address in your phone, you can click the share button on iOS or Android, and you can find like add to home button. And if you click that, the UI will then be installed as an app on your phone, so you always have access to all of your tables. So thank you so much for bearing with me for such a long video. I hope you will have so much fun building the Dune Weaver tables, same as I did. If this is your first time here, check out the Dune Weaver website here where you can find out more about the Dune Weaver project. If you already build your Dune Weavers and really enjoy this project, please consider joining my Patreon page to keep this project going. Thank you so much, and I see you next time.